Hello. Today I am reading Tom Wolfe's The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. I'm on Chapter 2, The Bladder Totem. For 2 or 3 days it went like that for me in the garage with the merry pranksters waiting for Keezy. The pranksters took me pretty much for granted. One of the flag people, a blonde who looked like Doris Day but was known as Doris DeLay, told me I ought to put some more, color into my appearance. That hurt, Doris DeLay, but I know you meant it as a kindly suggestion. She really did, so I kept my necktie on to show that I had pride, but nobody gave a damn about that. I just hung around and Cassidy flipped his sledgehammer, spectral tapes played, babies cried, me's got flipped out, bus glowed, flag people walk, freaks loop in out of sunlight on Old Harriet Street, and I only left to sleep for a few hours or go to the bathroom. The bathroom, yes. There was no plumbing in the warehouse, not even any cold water. You could go out into a little vacant lot next door behind a board fence and take a stance amid the great fluffy fumes of human piss that were already lufting up from the mud. Or you could climb a ladder through a trap door that led up to the hotel where there were dead flophouse halls lined with rooms of a kind of spongy, scabbard old wood that broke apart under your glance and started crawling. Vermin, molting underlife. It was too rank even for the pranksters. Most of them went up to the Shell station at the corner, so I went up to the Shell station on the corner at 6th and Howard. I asked where the bathroom is, and the guy gives me the rotten look of, okay, you're not even buying gas, but you want to use the bathroom. And finally he points inside the office to the tin can. The key to the bathroom is chained to a big empty Shell oil can. I pick it up and walk out of the office part, out onto the concrete apron, where the credit card elite are tanking up and stretching their legs and tweezing their undershorts out of the aging, waxy folds of their scrota. And I am out there carrying a Shell oil can in both hands like a bladder totem, around the corner to the toilet, and, all right, so what? But suddenly it hits me that for the pranksters, this is permanent. This is the way they live. Men, women, boys, girls, most from middle-class upbringings, men and women and boys and girls and children and babies, this is the way they have been living for months, for years, some of them. Across America and back on the bus, down to the ratlands of Mexico and back, selling like gypsies along the service center fringes, copying urinations, fencing with dirt, rotten looks. It even turns out they have films and tapes of their duels with service station managers in the American heartland trying to keep their concrete bathrooms and empty dispensa towels safe from the day-glow crazies. Back inside the warehouse, everything keeps up. Slowly I am getting more and more of a strange feeling about the whole thing. It's not just the costumes, the tapes, the bus, and all that, however. I've been through some crew-cut college fraternity weekends that have been weirder looking and sounding, insane on the Beano. The feeling begins when the flag people start coming up to me and saying things like, well, when Cassidy is flipping the sledgehammer with his head down in the mole of the universe, just moling the hell out of it, and blam, the sledgehammer, he misses it, and it slams onto the concrete floor of the garage, and one of the flag people says, you know, the chief says when Cassidy misses it, it's never an accident. For a start, the term the chief. The pranksters have 2 terms for referring to Keezy. If it is some mundane matter they're talking about, it's just Keezy, as in Keezy got a tooth knocked out. But if they are talking about Keezy as the leader or teacher of the whole group, he becomes the chief. At first this struck me as phony, but then it turned to misto. As the general misto steam began rising in my head, this steam, I can actually hear it inside my head, a great like when you hear if you take too much quinine. I don't know if this happens to anybody else or not, but if there is something startling enough, fearful, awesome, strange, or just weird enough, something I sense I can't cope with, it is as if I go on red alert and the fogging steam starts. When Cassidy misses, it's never an accident. He's saying something. There's something going on in the room. Something's getting uptight. There's bad vibrations and he wants to break it up. They mean it. Everything in everybody's life is significant, and everybody is alert watching for the meanings. And the vibrations. There is no end of vibrations. Sometime after that, I was up in Haight-Ashbury with some kid, not a prankster, a kid from another communal group, and the kid was trying to open an old secretaire, the kind that opens out into a desktop you can write on, and he pinches his finger on a hinge. Well, instead of saying, "ah, shit," or whatever, the whole thing becomes a parable of life. And he says, "That's typical. You see that? Even the poor cat who designed this thing was playing the game they wanted him to play. You see how this thing is designed to open out? It's always out, into. It's got to be out, into your life. The old bullshit thrust, you know. They don't even think about it, you know. This is just the way they design things, and you're here and they're there, and they're going to keep coming at you. You see that kitchen table? There's an old enamel top kitchen table you can see through a doorway in there. Now that's actually better design. It actually is, than all this ornate shit. I mean, I truly dig that kitchen table because the whole thing is right there, you know? It's there to receive. That's what it's all about. It's passive. I mean, what the hell is a table anyway? Freud said a table is a symbol of a woman with her shanks open, bawling it in dreams, you know? And what is this a symbol of? He points to the secretary. It's a symbol of fuck you, right? And so on, until I just want to put my hand on his shoulder and say, why don't you just kick it in the kneecaps and let it go at that? But anyway, this talk just flows. Everyone is picking up on the most minute incidents as if they are metaphors for life itself. Everybody's life becomes more fabulous every minute than the most fabulous book. It's phony, goddammit, but misto. And after a while it starts to infect you, like an itch, the rosella. There is also a lot about games. The straight world outside, it seems, is made up of millions of people involved, trapped in games they aren't even aware of. The guy they call Hassler comes in out of the sunlight screen on Harriet Street and zoom! He doesn't even wait for the metaphors. I never got into an abstract discussion with a total stranger so fast in my life. We began talking right away about the games. Hassler is a young guy, good-looking with a wide face and long hair with bangs just exactly like Prince Valiant in the comic strip, and a turtleneck jersey on with metal stars on it, of the sort generals wear on their shoulders. And he says, games so permeate our culture that rumble, ego games, judge everything, screwed up brainwashing, tell ourselves, keep on oppositioning. Here Hassler stiffens his hands and brings his fingertips together like a karate collision. But my mind is wandering. I am having a hard time listening because I am fascinated by a little plastic case with a toothbrush and toothpaste in it that Hassler has tucked under one thumb. It is shuddering around in front of my eyes as Hassler's hands opposition. What a curious bunch of bohos. This guy, with the general stars on his jersey, is giving a kind of Vesper service lecture on the sins of man, and a toothbrush. But of course, he brushes after every meal. He really does. He brushes after every meal despite the fact they are living here in this garage like gypsies, and there is no hot water, no toilet, no beds, except for a couple of mattresses in which the dirt, the dust, the damps, and the scuds are all one, melded with the stuffing. And they stretch out on the scaffoldings in the bus in the back of a pickup truck, nostrils mildewing. But you know what? People are beginning to see through the warp of the games. Not just the heads and everybody, but all sorts of people. You take in California, there's always been this pyramid. Here Hassler outlines a pyramid in the air with his hands, and I watch, fascinated, as the plastic toothbrush case, shiny, slides up one incline of the pyramid. They're transcending the bullshit, says Hassler, only his voice is earnest and clear and sweet like a high school valedictorian's, as if he just said, may next year's seniors remember our motto, transcending the bullshit. A nice line of light there along the plastic, a straight, rigid gleam from the past, from wherever Hassler came from. Now I'm doing it again. That amiable itch. I just extracted a metaphor, a piece of transcendent bullshit from this freaking toothbrush case. Transcending the bullshit. A tall guy comes into the warehouse wearing some kind of blue and orange outfit like a mime harlequin's and with an orange day-glow mask painted on his face, so that he looks extraordinarily like the Spirit, if you remember that comic strip. This, I am told, is Ken Babbs, who used to be a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. I get to talking to him, and I ask him what it was like in Vietnam, and he says to me very seriously, you really want to know what it was like? Yeah, Come over here, I'll show you. So he leads me back into the garage and he points to a cardboard box lying on the floor, just lying there amid all the general debris and madness. It's all in there. It's all in there. Right. I reach in there and lift out a typewritten manuscript, 400 or 500 papers. I leaf through. It's a novel about Vietnam. I look at Babs. He gives me a smile of good fellowship with his day glow mask glowing and crinkling up. It's all in there, I say. Then I guess it takes a while to get it. Yeah, right, says Babs, breaking into a laugh as if I just said the funniest thing in the world. Yeah, right. With the mask glowing and bouncing around on his face, I lower the novel back into the box, and for days I would notice Babs' novel about Vietnam lying there on the floor, out in the middle of everything, as if waiting for a twister to whip it up and scatter it over San Francisco County. And Babs would be somewhere around saying to some other bemused soul, yeah, right. The merry pranksters were all rapidly assembling, waiting for Kesey. George Walker arrives. Walker has on no costume. He is just like some very clean-cut, blonde college kid wearing a t-shirt and corduroy pants, smiling and outgoing. Just a good West Coast golden boy except for a few random notes like the Lotus racing car he has outside, painted with orange day glow so that it lights up at dusk, skidding around the corners of the California suburbs and four-wheel drifts. And Paul Foster. Foster, I am told, is some kind of mad genius. A genius at computers, with all sorts of firms with names like Techniflex, Digitron, SolarTex, Automaton, trying to hunt him down to lay money on him to do this or that for them. Whether he is a genius or not, I couldn't say. He certainly looks mad enough. He is hunched over in a corner in a theater seat, an emaciated figure, but with a vast accumulation of clothes. It looks like he has on about 8 pairs of clown's pants, one on top of the other, each one filthier than the next one. All black, sooty, torn, mungy, and fungus. His head is practically shaven, and he is so thin that all the flesh seems to be gone off his head, and when he contracts his jaw muscles, it is as if some very clever anatomical diagram has been set in motion with little facial muscles, striations, sheaths, ligaments, tissues, nodules, integuments that nobody ever suspected before bunching up, popping out, springing into definition in a complex chain reaction. And he contracts his jaw muscles all the time, concentrating, with his head down and his eyes burning, concentrating on a drawing he is doing on a pad of paper, an extremely small but crucial drawing by the looks of his concentration. Black Maria sits on a folding chair and smiles ineffably, but says nothing. One of the flag people, a thin guy, tells me about Mexicans strung out on huaraches. Doris DeLay tells me, "They're off on their own, freak," Hassler continues, "and it may not look like much, but they're starting to transcend the bullshit. There's this old trinity, power, position, authority, and why should they worship these old gods and these old forms of authority? Fuck God. Fuck God." There's a voice behind a blanket curtain to one side. Somebody is back there rapping off what Hassler just said. Fuck God, up with the devil. It is a very sleepy, dreamy voice, however. The curtain pulls back, and standing there is a wiry little guy who looks like a pirate. Behind him, back in there behind the curtains, all sorts of wires, instruments, panels, speakers are all piled up. A glistening heap of electronic equipment, and the tape is back there going, "In the Nowhere Mine," the guy looks like a pirate, as I said, with long black hair combed back Tarzan style and a mustache, and a gold ring through his left earlobe. He stares out, sleepily. In fact, he is a Hell's Angel. His name is Freewheeling Frank. He has on the Hell's Angel's colors, meaning a jacket with insignia, a jacket with the sleeves cut off and the skull with the helmet on it and wings and a lot of other arcane symbols. "Fuck God," says Freewheeling Frank. "Fuck all forms of, and the words trail off in a kind of dreamy way, although his lips are still moving, and he kind of puts his head down and trudges off into the gloom toward the bus, with his hands flicking out, first this side, then the other, like Cassidy. He is off on his trip, like Cassidy, And all right, a Hell's Angel. And the Hassler brushes his teeth after every meal, in the middle of a Shell Station tin can economy. Just then, Keensey arrives.